The movie opens with two men from India who came seeking for a job in Saudi Arabia with a working visa. One is Najib, and the other is Hakim. Hakim speaks Hindi and a little English, while Najib only understands his mother's language. While waiting for their expected company to pick them up but couldn't find them, it was getting late already. So Hakim meets with a fellow Hindu man and explains their predicament. The man helps them contact their company's phone number through a phone booth, but unfortunately, he couldn't connect, suggesting it could be due to the holidays. Most Arabic companies don't function on that day, so they should wait a little bit. It was already getting dark, and Hakim wants to call his family to inform them that he's already made it to the Middle East, their dream country. At that point, an elderly man with a turban in Arabic attire comes looking for someone. At first, he passes them but later comes back. After thoroughly inspecting their passports, he asks them to get into his truck. Since they don't have any options, they join the man. He drives several miles into the desert and stops at a barn. The elderly man calls out to his fellow, asking him to take Hakim for the night. Najib tries to communicate, saying they both came to work for the same company, but this isn't the company that was promised. At that moment, the elderly man, called Kafil, which in their language means boss or master, beats Najib with a rope from his turban, telling him to get back inside the truck. He doesn't really know what to do next, so he obeys. They get to another barn where he drops him and tells him that he would be coming back the next day to check up on him. Najib looks around at his surroundings where he's welcomed by the scorching desert breeze and the noises from the goats. He sees an old man and asks him for help, but the man is too old to do anything, so he requests for some water instead. The old man shows him a metal tank where he scoops some water from the hose. After carefully examining his environment, he decides to sleep beside his new Kafil. While sleeping, he dreams of his happy life in India where he was working with his canoe. He scoops sands from underneath the river to the boat, and that was how he makes his daily ends meet. While working, he overheard a fellow talking about a working visa for people who wish to work for big companies abroad. It's really expensive, so Najib had to mortgage his house to come up with a set amount. He takes the money to the agent who assures him that once he gets his visa and starts working abroad, he would be able to buy another house within months and take good care of his family. Najib is excited about his newfound hope, so he gets some foodstuffs and asks his mom to make him some biryani so he could enjoy with his wife. In the present, Najib is woken up with a kick by the furious Kafil who threatens to end his life if he sleeps in his tent again. Najib, with his broken dream, goes to sleep inside an abandoned car. The next day, under the Scotchy desert, already looking exhausted from reality, he meets with the old man who's taking care of the goats and camel in the barn. The old man understands his language a little, so he gives him freshly tapped milk from the goat to give to the Kafil. Najib, who's barely eaten with for days, gulps some milk down. In the process, the old man yells at him for drinking the milk, yet refills it, and gives it back to him to give to the Kafil. The man wakes up and receives his freshly made milk without hesitation while Najib watches. The Kafil then tells him he needs to learn from the old man on how to milk the goats and run other errands in the barn. Najib goes down on his knees and pleads with the man to save him because this was not the life that was promised, but he's chased out of the tent. While sitting under the hot sun, the other man that brought him to the desert drives in. He runs towards him, pleading that he wants to return back home, but he's given a heavy bag to take into the tent. After dropping the bag, he runs back to the men with his paperwork showing the name of his agent whom he paid all his money to before coming to the country. But the paper is instantly torn apart by the angry elderly man who gives him an old shoe with a gown to wear since he would begin his full-time job real soon. Najib is sitting outside under the hot temperature while thinking about his current life when he's invited by the men to come eat some bread. A hungry Najib slowly walks into the tent where he's offered a piece of bread which he quickly takes a bite. In Arabic language, the older man tells the other one that his angry behavior is triggered because he hasn't eaten for days, and he assures him that he would learn how to work for them real soon. Afterwards, he runs to the old herdsman and asks him for the route to civilization. The old man tells him that it's very distant and doesn't know if, probably with foot, one would last long in the desert. Left with no glimpse of ever returning to his family, Najib spends another night inside the abandoned truck while reminiscing about his last moment with his beautiful wife Nabil and his mom. Before coming to the present country, Najib promises to call when he finally gets to the company he works for. After boarding the train, it was there he meets Hakim. Hakim's mom begs Najib to look after his son since they are both going to work for the same company. Now in the presence, Najib is taking a dump when he receives some Bruce Lee kick from behind. The Kafil is furious at him for using his expensive water to wipe his butt and warns him next time he wouldn't have legs to stand or bend over, so the old man tells him to use the sand to wipe his butt next time. That hot afternoon, a water guy came to refill the tank when Najib approaches him and begs for his help in transporting him to the city. At that moment, the Kafil comes out from behind and starts beating Najib. Najib tries fighting back, so he threatens him with a gun saying he would end his life and nobody would remember his existence. Najib, still maintaining his stance, gets hit on his head, causing him to fall on the ground with a bruise on his head. After recovering from his injury, he walks towards the old herdsman and asks him how long he's been in the desert serving these monsters, but the old man couldn't even remember his name. Talk more of the moment he arrived at the desert. The next day while resting, the younger Kafil calls out to Najib to come help milk the goats. Being an amateur, he receives a welcoming kick from the goat he's trying to get some milk from. However, the Kafil enjoys a bit of it and shows him the correct stance on how to milk the goats. Najib doesn't understand and asks about the other herdsman, but gets scolded for talking too much, and he's asked to do what he's told. He gets back to it, and this time gets it right. Meanwhile, a fight ensues among the animals, and he ends up being a victim of the brawls and gets knocked out. But he's instantly woken up by some drops of water and some shouting from the angry Kafil who tells him to get back to work immediately. It doesn't take time, and Najib has adjusted to his new life, his eyes swollen by failed promises. While on his duty, he sees a group of man-eating birds gathering around a corpse, and he's shocked to see the other herdsman buried under the sand. He gets closer to observe the corpse, but the vultures couldn't wait while the living delays their meal. So they attack Najib, making him run for safety with some fresh injuries to add to the score. That evening, he couldn't help but mourn the painful death of the old man. One day, he couldn't withstand the hardship and decides to run away, but he's quickly seen by the Kafil and chased down with a camel. The old man quickly catches up to him and inflicts more pain to his injury by hitting his legs with his gun, so he wouldn't have the limbs to think of escaping. While hoarding his livestock, he ventures into another side of the mountain and bursts down in tears when he sees Hakim, who's completely unrecognizable. Hakim promises that he'd be back with more information on how to escape from their Kafils with the help of a friend. After that encounter, the next day, Najib receives a writing from Hakim narrating the escape plan. The Kafils are preparing for the wedding of their fellow, and they would seize that opportunity to run away from their captors. Najib is introduced to Kadiri, who knows the road to their freedom. The day finally comes, and the Kafil gives Najib some bread and instructions on what to do after his departure, also promising to bring some of the wedding biryani. After his departure, Najib takes a good bath, and afterwards, he gives them enough food and wears his best clothes with his bag. But he's told to leave his bag behind to avoid suspicions from other Kafils, yet he insists. Halfway through the journey, the group decides to stop and drink some water from the nearby ban, but they're mistaken for thieves and shot at. However, they manage to escape, with Najib leaving his bag behind. Days have passed, and the group is still in the desert, far from water, food, and civilization. Najib gets sore feet, and Hakim starts hallucinating. At one moment, they stop for prayers, but a group of desert snakes starts coming their way. Kadiri is quick in running to safety with Hakim, but Najib is told to stay still, which saves his life, and the snakes don't hurt him. Hakim can't bear the burning sun on his skin and dry throat, and he succumbs to his fate. Najib begs Kadiri to revive his friend, but there's nothing he can do, and finally, Hakim dies. Najib, who can't bear losing his only friend, doesn't notice the sandstorm, and Kadiri has to carry him on his shoulders to run away. But that doesn't help, and they're soon covered by the desert sand, with Hakim already buried under the sand. The duo walks for a while and finally sees a pond in the desert, and they're both revived to continue the journey. After months of another journey, the duo is on their last hope, but still continues. After a night's rest, Najib wakes up and can't find Kadiri, only to find water in a bottle reserved for him. He continues the journey alone, and after taking the last drop of water, he hears the sound of moving vehicles nearby. He runs further, extending his body to the main road, lying there, and hoping he can be saved. Several vehicles pass without helping, but with his last breath, help comes from an Arabic man who gives him a lift to civilization. Najib walks along the street, looking like a mentally ill person. Fortunately, he's found by the Indian community, and he's taken care of by the individuals there. Afterwards, he's taken to the embassy to get his documents ready, since he doesn't have any form of identity. He still remembers his home address, and his family is contacted. Inside the customs office, a group of Arabic men come to claim their runaway slaves, and Najib's Kafil is among them. He finds him among the men and tells Najib that he's lucky he wasn't the one who paid for his visa, or he'd have been flogged and dragged back to the barn. Meaning that all this while, because of how stupid they were, they failed to make proper inquiries before traveling, and their humanity was stripped away from them. Moral of the movie: we don't suffer because of a lack of money, we suffer because most people are just stupid. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe.